Amounts of cloud and outbreaks of rain will feed down from the north, and so particularly across northern parts it is going to be a bit of a damp day with some heavier bursts of rain possible. More showery rain to come as we go into the beginning of next week, and no major rise in our temperatures.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good evening, I'm Johnny Ratner. The M62 is down to a single-lane westbound through West Yorkshire. A car caught fire just before the Tingley exit, junction 28, where everyone's been funnelled into the outside lane. It's taking just under an hour and the queue's back to 30 at Rothwell. And the M40 in Oxfordshire is down to a single-lane southbound, junction 10 to 9 towards Bicester. Emergency barrier repair works are underway, causing long queues and back onto the A34 halfway to Oxford. In Dorset, the A350 remains shut between West Melbury and Compton Abbas. This is just south of Shaftesbury, of course, for accident investigation work. And in Powys, the A489, the Newtown bypass is closed after a lorry caught fire. Expect major disruption on ferries out of Dover to Calais because of strike action on the port of Calais. Passengers are being advised to go from Dunkirk this evening. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
We've got summer sewn up with an incredible trio of treats, and you could win them. First, there's a fabulous £15,000 in tax-free cash to ensure this summer is special. What would you spend that on? Next, you'll also receive the latest iPhone 15 and a set of Apple AirPods. And finally, £500 to spend at your favourite UK attraction. Fun in the sun could be on us. For a chance to win the iPhone, treats and £15,000 cash, text prize to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or post your name and number to GB06 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 28th of June. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
As time passes, she could have said Storm.
You made my argument for me.
My guests and I tackle the issues that really matter with a sharp take on every story.
It went everywhere.
Something practical could be done.
Or I can become something different.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
A very good evening to you. It's 7 p.m. on Friday, the 7th of June, and this is a GB News election special. Now, for the next action-packed hour, I've got former Conservative MP Henry Smith, the former Conservative MP Jessica Harrington, former Labour MP Dennis McShane, and lifelong Liberal Democrat and federal board member Callum Robertson. There we are. Now, in 4 weeks' time, we will know which party will lead the country for the next 5 long years. Will it be Rishi Sunak, forced to apologise today for bailing out of D-Day commemorations? Keir Starmer, well, he wants your vote, but is he too wooden to win a TV debate? Ed Davey went baking with school children this week, as you do. And will he be trusted, though, to cook your books? And Nigel Farage's return to frontline politics has certainly shaken things up. Will he win your vote for the Reform Party? Well, it's all to play for, and we'll discuss the last big week in politics right after your latest news headlines, and it's Sam Francis.
Martin, thank you very much and good evening to you. It's just after 7 o'clock. We will start with news from the election campaign trail. The Prime Minister has been heckled in Wiltshire as he resumed his campaigning this evening. Rishi Sunak was discussing economic track record among the Conservatives when a doctor shouted from the audience.
The country is not stupid. They know when lesser qualified people are being used to conduct consultations. They cannot be coped with by half-qualified staff. And you will find out how much they earn. The amount that they earn is publicly declared on every website.
Well, that interruption this evening came after he's been heavily criticised by opposition parties, veterans and even some of his own Conservative colleagues for leaving D-Day commemorations early yesterday. He has admitted that returning home for a TV interview was a mistake, but said that people should judge him by his actions when it comes to supporting the armed forces.
On reflection, that was a mistake and I apologise. I think it's important, though, given the enormity of the sacrifice made, that we don't politicise this. The focus should rightly be on the veterans who gave so much. I had the honour and privilege of speaking to many of them and their families, hearing their stories, expressing my gratitude personally to them. But I'm someone who will always admit when I've made a mistake. That's what you'll always get from me.
Standing on the cliffs that US soldiers scaled on D-Day, Joe Biden this afternoon warned against modern authoritarian threats. Speaking in Normandy, the US president stressed the need to support Ukraine, and he drew contrasts with his rival Donald Trump. He also urged people to stay true to the values that were fought for in World War II.
We're the fortunate heirs of a legacy of these heroes, those who scale the cliffs, point to Hawk. We must also be the keepers of their mission, the keepers of their mission, the bearers of the flame of freedom that they kept burning bright. That is the truest testimonial to their lives. Our actions every day to ensure that our democracy endures and the soul of our nation endures.
Joe Biden there speaking from France earlier. Well, here in the UK, Labour is pledging to introduce a series of new schemes aimed at boosting the availability of mortgages for first-time buyers. Among their plans would be an expansion of the mortgage guarantee, meaning that if a bank repossesses a first-time buyer's house, the government would compensate some of its losses. The Conservative Party has also unveiled its own measures, including a pledge not to raise stamp duty.
This is a game changer. If you're a young couple and you want to have the security of a roof, your own roof over your head, this is a game changer, because many of those people, let's say a young couple, both on a reasonable wage, will be paying a fortune in rent, and because of that they can't afford to save for a deposit. And if you don't have a parent who can help you out, that means you're never going to get on the housing ladder.
And elsewhere on the campaign trail today, the Liberal Democrats have been setting out their plans to make parental leave more flexible, including what they call a dad month. On the election trail today, Sir Ed Davey's been promising to double statutory maternity pay and encourage more fathers to take time off work. Well, the Conservatives have said that they would cut taxes for thousands of families. However, Lib Dem spokesperson for Education, Children and Young People, Marina Wilson, says families need more choice and flexibility.
There's lots of parents up and down the country, both mums and dads, who'd love to take more time off work in those early months for their children's first smile, first steps, first words, but just simply can't afford to do so because statutory pay at the moment is less than half the minimum wage if you were working full time. So we'd double statutory maternity and shared parental pay. We'd also increase paternity pay to 90% of earnings with a cap, but also we would look to increase paternity leave pay, which is very low at the moment, again to 90% of earnings.
And just a reminder that, of course, in the next half hour or so, we will start to see leading figures from the 7 major political parties go head-to-head in the second televised debate of the general election campaign so far. We will, of course, bring you all the reaction here with Martin throughout the next hour and then on into the evening on GB News. In other news tonight, CCTV images have emerged showing TV doctor Michael Mosley shortly after he left a Greek beach and then went missing. The presenter, who's known for appearing on programmes like the BBC's The One Show and his podcast Just One Thing, hasn't been seen since Wednesday. Sniffer dogs, divers and drones are now scanning the island, which is around 25 miles north of Rhodes. And finally, some sports news for you. Harry Kane has returned to captain England in their final friendly against Iceland ahead of Euro 2024 tonight. It comes after the manager Gareth Southgate confirmed his final squad yesterday, fine-tuning his best team now for Germany. His side are among the favourites to lift the trophy at the tournament, and he has left some big names out of his 26-man squad, including Jack Grealish and James Maddison. They have both been dropped, while Harry Maguire is also set to miss out because of injury. That's the latest from the newsroom for now. Another update at 8 o'clock. In the meantime, sign up to GB News Alerts. You can scan the code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you very much, Sam, for that. Now, we've got a lot to get through in this show. Now, the auto cue has gone blank, so let's just start talking here with our panel. Top topic is guaranteed to be Rishi Sunak. Let's talk about the PM being heckled today. He was out and about. These kind of moments might exemplify, actually, why politicians don't do street politics. Of course, Nigel Farage was milkshaked earlier in the week, and now here we are, Rishi being heckled by the public. Let's start with you, Jessica. It just gets worse for Rishi Sunak, doesn't it?
Well, he's apologised today, and he needed to, because it's difficult to find any person who hasn't taken a view about the decision-making by the Prime Minister and at number 10 about when to exit those commemorations. I mean, I do think, in terms of the actual services and the celebrations and the commemorations that took place, I don't know about anyone else on the panel, but it was all so moving, and it's made an impact, I think, on so many people. And realistically, it is probably one of the last chances we're going to have for such an anniversary. To have veterans there.
Spin on it there, but it wasn't a positive day for Rishi Sunak.
Not at all.
When he bailed early, and he's been an absolute barrage of criticism ever since.
There has, and I totally sit here and say I'm glad he's apologised, because he needed to. I'm not going to be saying anything other than that. And I think that the fact that it's still top of the news this evening, I think it does say a lot.
OK, let's bring you in, Dennis McShane. Again, today we knew was going to be a bad news day for Rishi Sunak, but again, it's just got worse. These kind of interfaces with the public, especially when you go down the NHS route, generally ends badly for Conservatives. This, again, another car crash moment for Rishi Sunak.
Disaster. It reminds me of the 1983 election with Michael Foot. You remember him, a wonderful man of literature, of culture, of art, but useless at politics, and he kept making gaffes to the extent that the Labour Party executive had a very emergency meeting, and the General Secretary came out and said the executive has considered the Michael Foot position and voted by 15 votes to 8 that he could continue as leader of the Labour Party. And, well, that really helped win us a lot of votes at the time. And they're like that with Rishi. I've always thought his inexperience. He's never really been a politician in Britain. He's scarpered from Winchester and Oxford to make a fortune in Silicon Valley. Good luck to him, married the richest woman heiress in the world. Good luck to him, no problems. But politics is a trade. It's like broadcasting. You've got to do it 1 year, 2 years, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years, several days every week. And he's just, in a sense, a dilettante.
OK, Callum Robertson, let's bring you in now. Let's start with D-Day. I mean, Rishi's been panned from every angle on this. Was it, do you think, the Conservative or Rishi Sunak's Gerald Ratner moment, or are we overreacting?
I think if you look at President Zelensky from Ukraine, who managed to come and stay for the entire thing, and he's fighting a war. He is fighting a war against Russia, akin to the kind of evil we're seeing in World War II, yet he was able to stay for the entire thing. What does it say about the values of our Prime Minister that he's not willing to stand up and meet our troops and value our troops, the ones who fought and were lucky enough to survive on those beaches 80 years ago yesterday? I think it's disgraceful.
You really do think it's that bad? And what's been interesting about this, on my show yesterday, I had Johnny Mercer on. Johnny Mercer setting out the Veterans Bill, laying out some very, very sensible policies, it seemed. Of course, he was accused of politicking on D-Day, on the 80th anniversary, by the Shadow Defence Minister, Jessica Harrington. But then it all went so disastrously wrong. I mean, it just seems to me, how on earth could somebody, perhaps even the Prime Minister himself, have decided that an interview with the ITV was more important than sticking around with Macron, with Biden, David Cameron being a stand-in, David Cameron looking like the Prime Minister? It has to be one of the worst decisions a Prime Minister has ever made.
Well, I'm not going to defend it, and I've already said I'm glad he's apologised because he needed to. My understanding from what he said in his interview earlier was that the decision on the diary had been taken many months ago, but diaries, my understanding is, in the modern world, can be reviewed and updated, and I don't know why that decision was made. Plainly, it's nothing I would know about. But in terms of the, I think the word is optics, in terms of how it looked on the world stage, I'm not going to say that was a good look. Of course it wasn't. Of course it wasn't. I do think, and I absolutely underline this by saying, I'm not making light of it at all, but we have now got a long campaign, and I know that I hope that the country will also want to look at all the other topics that we need to, who's going to run the country, the economy, education, defence and so on. But I'm not moving away. I can't move the news agenda on my own, and I wouldn't dream to either.
OK, thank you very much, Jessica Harrington, Callum Robertson and Dennis McShane. We're crossing to the spin room next. Of course, we're waiting for that big BBC debate, and we'll talk to a Labour MP. Back soon.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Joint CEO at the UK Sepsis Trust, Dr. Ron Daniels. Very good to see you this morning. Why is it with sepsis we sort of hear very little about it in day-to-day life until there's either a big story or a big tragedy? Why is that? Is it common?
Well, it's astonishing, isn't it? We have a condition here that affects nearly 250,000 people across the UK each year and claims 48,000 lives. And just for context, breast cancer, and I'm not diminishing how horrible that can be, claims 11,000 lives. So sepsis is 4 times more prolific as a killer. I think the reason we don't hear about it is because it doesn't really belong to any particular speciality of doctors. It touches every aspect of healthcare, and therefore there's no professional group to be championing it, which means it needs an advocacy organisation like ours.
My understanding is that it's when your own immune system starts to attack the tissues, but by the time people realise that their temperature isn't just flu or something, they can often be in quite a perilous state.
It arises in people of any age, people with whether or not they've got underlying illness, and it can arise as a consequence of any infection. So it presents hugely differently.
So what do we do?
If you're concerned something is devastatingly wrong, there are 6 key symptoms to look for, and they spell the word sepsis. S for slurred speech or confusion. E for extreme pain in the muscles or joints. P for passing no urine, no water in a day. S for severe breathlessness. I for it feels like I'm going to die, and people really do say that. And then the final S for skin that's mottled or discoloured or very pale. Any one of those 6 in the context of infection, it's go straight to A&E.
The People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking, this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And why it matters to you. From your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you. Good afternoon, Britain. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Now, I really hope you're not bored of TV debates because there's lots and lots more to come, including a 7-way debate tonight featuring leading figures from the 7 biggest political parties across Britain. Penny Mordaunt, Angela Rayner and Nigel Farage are among those appearing at the event taking place in central London. And we can cross right now to our political editor, Christopher Hope, who's in that spin room at BBC HQ. Chris, welcome to the show. So the event is building up, not another one, as they might say, a 7-header. What's the latest?
Martin, hi. Yeah, welcome to the spin room here for the 7-way election debate with the 7 major parties. With me now is Ellie Reeves, who is Labour's national campaign coordinator. Ellie Reeves, tonight is the first time viewers can really get the measure maybe of Angela Rayner, your deputy leader. She's leading the way for Labour. How is she getting ready for this?
She'll be making sure that she's on top of everything, as she always is. You know, we're really excited about tonight and the opportunity that Angela has got to talk about our positive message of change after 14 years of Conservative chaos. And I know that Angela will absolutely smash it.
You had a big day today with your manifesto being signed off. The Unite Union has not signed it off. Is that a worry for you?
Well, we had a really positive meeting today on our manifesto, our Clause 5 meeting, and Unite were at that meeting, and at the end of that process and some debate and discussion, we passed our manifesto with acclamation. So I'm sorry to now hear what Sharon has said. She was in the room earlier today.
Sharon Graham,
really
Sharon Graham being the General Secretary of Unite.
That's right, yes. But it was a very, very positive meeting, and it felt that everyone in that room was getting behind our positive vision for the future.
But Unite is a massive donor, one of the top 3 donors to the party. If they won't support your manifesto, that's not a great look, is it?
Well, as I say, the manifesto was endorsed today in the room, and now it will be a case of launching that and taking it to the public for them to make their minds up. But we've got a really, really clear vision of change and renewal in that manifesto, and I can't wait for it to be launched so people can see that offer.
And that's next Thursday. Where are you launching it?
I don't think that any details about where or when that launch will be decided yet.
Well, I'm sure we'll reveal it on GBNews. The Guardian newspaper, which is quite aligned with Labour, some would say, it says you're looking at 10 to 12 tax rises in autumn to pay for your spending plans. Is that right?
That's not the plans that I'm certainly aware of.
Are they in the manifesto?
What I will tell you is that every plan that we set out in our manifesto will be fully funded and fully costed. But we have been clear, we won't be raising income tax, national insurance or VAT. But all of our plans are fully costed, and people will see that in the manifesto.
And Tory claims that your plans will cost £2,000 more over 4 years in tax rises. Right?
It's nonsense. You know, it's just a lie. And we've been clear: no income tax rises, no national insurance rises, no VAT rises. This is just desperation from a Conservative government who've presided over the highest tax burden in 70 years.
You've only saying a few, they are big taxes, but like capital gains tax, pensioners, tax allowances, the rest of it, all those might be hit.
We've set out some very specific tax changes that we would introduce. For example, ending tax breaks for private schools to pay for 6,500 new teachers in our state schools, ending non-dom tax status properly, so people that live here and work here pay their taxes here to fund those 40,000 extra procedures in the NHS. Proper windfall tax on the oil and gas giants. So we've set out those very specific tax rises.
Ellie Reeves, thank you for joining us tonight on GBNews. Thank you.
Thank you.
Martin, that's Ellie Reeves there, and she's a key figure in Labour's election campaign coordinator.
Yeah, and Chris, she sounds identical to her sister Rachel Reeves. In fact, if you close your eyes, could be the same person. Now, Chris, can you give us a little walkabout in the spin room? This is the action centre, the HQ, where the action is. Give us a little stroll about, mate.
OK. Paul, thank you, Rachel. Thank you, Ellie. Thank you, Ellie. OK, well, if you follow me this way, Martin, you'll see the spin room here. This is where the BBC are getting ready to do. This is Christian Fraser, a great man about to broadcast the BBC. We'll go around this way, shall we? This is where you're seeing lots of journalists here getting ready to brief. There's Jonathan there from the Labour Party. talking with Laura Trott. Are you guys getting on very well? It's interesting behind the scenes. Labour and Tory MPs are very.
We can get on privately, even though we disagree publicly.
Okay, fine. I'll keep going. Thank you. On live on GB News. Thank you. Here you have. There's Tim Shipman from the Sunday Times doing his work there. Isha Hazarika. This is where the engine room maybe of the spin room. No, they're all laughing at that. That's Joe Twyman, a spin doctor. They're all actually. There's Sean, formerly a Lib Dem, but they're doing pretty good. Let's just go this way, shall we? Thank you, Paul. Thank you, everybody. Back to work, please. Thank you. And we go right around here, and we see. I'll show you where the bar is, Martin. You might like. Here we are. So this is where we put all our food. Oh, and I'll get my colleague here, Camilla Tominey. You're live on GB News. Who's
honestly, what are you like?
Who's going to win today in the debate?
Well, obviously everyone's going to be looking at Farage because he's going to make absolute capital on the D-Day debacle, should we call it that? I wouldn't underestimate Penny Mordaunt because she is somebody who knows what she's doing in a debate. We've seen her perform every week at the Dispatch Box in the House of Commons, so she's very...
Who's going to win? Of the 7, who wins?
Who's wins?
Who's going to win?
Rayner, maybe. I mean, let's face it. The Tories are at an all-time low today. It's been the worst day of their campaign, if not any campaign. So it's going to be difficult for Mordaunt to defend Sunak. So I think it's going to be Rayner attacking Mordaunt with Farage making fun in between.
We'll wait and see. Thank you, Camilla Tominey. And just round the corner here, Paul, you'll see here. This is where this is where Martin, all the food is eaten, and the bar is. And here we go. That's your tour. That's your tour of the spin room here. I'll be live from here from 9 p.m. Do tune in.
Thank you, Chris Hope and Camilla Tominey. And it's so rare to see the journalists not at the bar. Things have changed since my time. Thank you, Chris Hope. We'll, of course, cross back throughout the show. Now back to the studio here in Paddington. And one of the main stories to come out of the debate so far is whether or not the Tories lied over Labour's tax plans. And Rishi Sunak doubled down on those claims this evening. Let's have a listen.
Because the only certainty with Labour that we all know, don't we, is that they are going to put up everyone's taxes. Right? And as you saw the other night, it's £2,000 in tax rises for every working family in our country. That's what all their uncosted policies add up to. I don't think that's the right policy. You don't think that's the right policy because we want to deliver financial security for our country.
So in Tuesday evening's debate, the Prime Minister repeatedly claimed the Labour government would mean a £2,000 of tax rises for every working household in Britain. Well, Labour say the Prime Minister knew he was lying when he made the claim. Like the Conservatives, Labour has pledged not to increase the rate of income tax, national insurance and VAT if it wins the general election. Now, let's get the thoughts of my panel on this. Let's start with you, Jessica Harrington. There are lies, there are damn lies, and there are statistics. Which category does this £2,000 tax rise, do you think, fall into?
Well, I think it falls into the success in keeping this issue in the news. I mean, let's face it, the Conservatives, their golden ticket often at election time is to point out their criticisms or their concerns to the great British public about Labour, putting up taxes that they just can't help it, this sort of phrase that it's in their DNA. So what I say is that I do think that Keir Starmer was slow to respond to it during the debate, and I think that was damaging to him at the time. Personally, I think that Rishi Sunak will be pleased that this issue has come back to the fore and it's still keeping in people's minds, can they really trust Labour with their money? They work so hard, they're working every hour. Is it a safe bet?
But Jessica, is it £2,000 per year?
Well, this is the thing. It came out in the wash, it was over 4 years, right? But the point is, Dennis McShane, it's stuck. We're talking about it. And Sir Keir Starmer, he looked confused, he looked befuddled by it, he didn't look like he'd been very well briefed. Now, you can argue that Rishi Sunak had been, how should we put it, massaging things, but nevertheless, everybody talks about it for days, Dennis.
But I've got a bright idea.
I'm sorry, please.
My bright idea is why don't we talk about the record levels of child poverty that the Tories have brought to us, rather than Labour fudging on Labour's tax and the Tories' tax. Why not talk about the record levels of child poverty, highest since 2004? Why not talk about our crumbling social care services, overseen by the Tory failures? Why not talk about the fact we can't get enough teachers in schools or enough police? Or actually the fact that there are members of the armed forces that are homeless. Okay, but why are we arguing over a lie that the Tories have been spinning when actually, realistically, we should be talking about issues that actually matter to working people?
So we were trying to talk about tax. Dennis McShane.
This is not the sort of Liberal Democrat Party political broadcast. I can tell you a lot of things about Liberal Democrats' austerity policies and all the damage you did to this country in your 5 years of creeping up the backside of David Cameron, but I won't, because we're here to talk about the debate. Now, I also thought, at first sight, why is Keir Starmer being a bit slow on this? And I just wonder, he knew he had in his pocket the head of the Treasury saying, this is a lie. You must not, no political party must cite Treasury officials as sanctioning this. And he waited calmly until it blew up the next morning, and it's been running all week. And indescribably, just as the word liar stuck to Boris Johnson after a bit, and then really stuck and got him out of Parliament, the word liar is now sticking to Rishi Sunak.
Okay.
And I think that's damaging.
OK, let's leave it there. Callum Robertson, Jessica Harrington, Dennis McShane. A lively exchange. Now, still to come, is Nadine Dorries right? And will the Conservatives disappear because of the Reform Party? And are the Liberal Democrats surging under Sir Ed Davey? But next, more on Rishi Sunak's D-Day PR disaster. You're with Martin Daubney, live here on GB News.
Good evening. It's time for your latest GB News weather update, brought to you by the Met Office. It is feeling a bit fresh considering it is early summer at the moment, and there will be some showery bursts around through the next couple of days, all due to an area of low pressure just to the north-northeast of us that's driving some cooler air across the country, and also some showery bursts as well. The showery bursts will be pushing their way southwards as we go through this evening and overnight. Some clear spells in between, particularly across some eastern parts, eastern Scotland, northeast England perhaps, where we get the clear skies here. Temperatures could drop, could get into low single figures, possibly a touch of grass frost. Nonetheless, a bit of a fresh, chilly start for many of us tomorrow. If we take a closer look at what we can expect tomorrow morning, then starting off in the south, a relatively cloudy picture for some of us, but some showery bursts possible and some decent bright sunny spells maybe around the Bristol Channel. Also a swathe of cloud and rain affecting more central parts, that pushing its way southwards. Then across Northern Ireland, Northern England and into Scotland, a mixture of sunny spells and scattered showers. The showers will always be most frequent in areas exposed to that north-northwesterly wind. So northern, northwestern Scotland are going to see the most frequent showers, and here they will be pretty heavy at times. There could even still be some rumbles of thunder and a bit of hail mixed in, and all the time some sleet or snow is possible over the highest ground. The cloud and rain across central parts through the morning does shift its way southwards and breaks up as it goes, with brightening, sunnier skies developing across central parts as we go through into the afternoon. Temperatures just about getting into the low 20s, a bit disappointing for the time of year. Sunday then starts off on a bright note across southern parts, again pretty chilly for some here, but increasing amounts of cloud and outbreaks of rain will feed down from the north, and so particularly across northern parts it is going to be a bit of a damp day with some heavier bursts of rain possible. More showery rain to come as we go into the beginning of next week, and no major rise in our temperatures.
This is GB News, and we are Britain's election channel.
This vote may seem to be about the politicians and the media, but it's actually about you. We won't forget that.
Join us up and down the country as we follow every moment together.
More than ever, it's important to hear all sides
as you make your decision in the run-up to polling day.
This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's election channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect, and then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
And welcome back to the GB News General Election Special as we look back on this hectic week in politics. Well, things were going better for Rishi Sunak after a decent performance at the Leaders' Debate, and then this. Well, he rocked up in Normandy for the D-Day anniversary, only to do a speech and leave early to head back to the UK. And then came the grovelling apology.
Reflection, that was a mistake and I apologise. I think it's important though, given the enormity of the sacrifice made, that we don't politicise this. The focus should rightly be on the veterans who gave so much. I had the honour and privilege of speaking to many of them and their families, hearing their stories, expressing my gratitude personally to them, but I'm someone who will always admit when I've made a mistake. That's what you'll always get from me.
Well, Keir Starmer did turn up to Normandy, and some people saying he didn't show up to the leaders' debate at all, though.
Keir Starmer, if people are struggling with their bills, why do you want to make it harder for them by saddling them with £2,000 worth of higher taxes? How is that going to make Paula or anyone's life easier?
Could you respond directly to Rishi Sunak?
This is the Prime Minister. Seems like a lifetime ago that Starmer was on the ropes. But by the way, did you know that Sir Keir Starmer's father was a toolmaker? I had no idea. I learned that on Tuesday night. You learn something new every time. But moving on, we had tears in Wales because Vaughan Gething broke down in the Senate ahead of a no-confidence vote that he went on to lose. And the vote was tabled by the Welsh Conservatives following a row over donations to Mr Gething's leadership campaign. Now, meanwhile, there were tears of laughter on the campaign trail with the Liberal Democrats, as usual. Ed Davey drumming up support among the elderly in Hampshire. Paddleboards, water slides, on his bike, and now the medium of music, drumming. The Liberal Democrat leader certainly looks like he's really enjoying his campaign trial, and why not? Do you know what? Good on him. We're still not sure, though. I'd be trusting Sir Ed Davey and his party to cook up the Treasury books.
So we've got agriculture and lemon juice. So the lemon juice. How much lemon juice? 1 millilitre of lemon juice.
It's the great Lib Dem bake-off. Now, the poll showed the Tories losing support to the Reform Party, galvanised, of course, by new leader Nigel Farage. And Conservatives are not the only ones left shaken this week. I know the old saying, any publicity is good publicity. Well, you don't need to tell that man Nigel Farage. Making a media moment of being milkshaked. Now, the photo bomb of the campaign so far surely goes to Liberal Democrats who decided to hire a boat behind Rishi Sunak. Now, look over there. They may well be shouting, is that our Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, sinking without trace? Seriously, where would this election be without the Liberal Democrats and their media circus? Looking around once again for floating voters. And that's your week on the campaign trail. Now, let's get more now on that calamitous decision from Rishi Sunak to pull out early from the D-Day anniversary celebrations in Normandy yesterday. And let's speak now to the former senior military intelligence officer, Philip Ingram. Philip, welcome to the show. I speak to you often on these matters. Philip, you're known for your forthright opinions. It just is astonishing what's happened. Philip, what's your take?
Completely shocking. You know, he's let the huge number of veterans that sacrificed or gave the ultimate sacrifice to sacrifice their lives for the democracy, the freedoms that we enjoy today. He's let them down. Not just the veterans that were attending there, but those that were attending because they were in the graves, under gravestones. He let all of them down. He let the country down. He let His Majesty down. He let those that are serving down. And he let himself down. He really let himself down really badly. This was more than a gross error of judgment and not something that, because it was timetabled weeks ago, he should have turned around and said, I'm sorry, no, this is too important. I'm staying.
Do you think this may have just been an oversight? May this have been of somebody in his ear who just made a wrong call? Or should the Prime Minister, who's known, he likes to say he's a detail man, should have been all over that detail and simply made the call? Nothing yesterday was more important than being in Normandy.
Well, quite simply, nothing was more important than being in Normandy, and he should have seen that. Now, you've highlighted something else that is a little bit more sinister and a little bit more serious. You know, his inner team should have said to him, sorry, Prime Minister, you need to stay. You really need to stay. And if even they didn't do that, then his ministers should have said, you really need to stay. And if they didn't do that, I'd love to know what advice they'd given him. If they didn't do that, then it's quite clear that there's people in his inner circle are actively working against him. But I think, he has damaged himself so badly with this that it's going to be virtually impossible to recover.
So, Philip, the day started so well. Johnny Mercer, the Veterans Minister, laid out the Veterans Bill. There's some good ideas in that, and so soon that was squandered. Can this be recovered? Or do you think amongst the veteran community and the wider electorate, this is simply a Ratner moment? The damage is done.
Yeah, well, Johnny Mercer's put so much effort into trying to do things for veterans, and I've been very critical of what Johnny does, but actually behind closed doors, he tries to achieve a lot. He's pushing hard. The Prime Minister turns around and says that he's given him and his office the wherewithal to do stuff, and he's established it. He hasn't given him the authority. He hasn't given him any power. So Johnny's had to fight hard for everything that's got in there. But no, I think what Rishi Sunak's done is he's effectively kicked the dead in their graves, and he's kicked the veterans in the teeth, and he has let the country down in such a way that he can't recover from this. I was supporting him in many ways online because I don't believe Keir Starmer actually is going to be any better, but I think Rishi has just damaged himself in a way that it can't be recovered from now.
Wow, strong words. Thank you for your forthright opinions. As ever, Philip Ingram, MBE, always a pleasure to have you on the show. Now, moving on, Nigel Farage announced his return to frontline politics this week, standing for election and even taking over as the leader of Reform. Now, if recent polls are to be believed, the Farage effect seems to be in full swing, with Reform now closing in on the Conservatives as the most popular rival to Labour. Now, Nadine Dorries says that she expects the Tories to disappear at this election. And let's see what my panel think. And still with me, Jessica Harrington, former Conservative MP for Erewash, Dennis McShane, former Labour MP and Minister of State for Europe, and Callum Robertson, former Lib Dems candidate and Liberal Democrats federal board member. Where to start? Let's start with you this time, Callum. So we appear to be reaching that fabled crossover point. The moment that Nigel Farage said would happen, few didn't believe it would happen. Could we now, nibbling 2 points behind, that was the most recent polling, now with Rishi Sunak's D-Day moment and the debate to come, do you expect there could be a possibility that Reform could overtake the Tories?
I think, yes, there is a statistical possibility that might happen, but I think we'll still see Reform winning no seats. And let me tell you why, because Reform, if you look at the psephology, so almost the statistics behind it, Reforms have broad support, but it's very thin. So they don't actually have a lot of areas where the pockets of support are particularly high. And I can speak to Nigel Farage's constituency quite well, because I stood in Clacton in 2019. I stood there and I spoke to thousands of voters.
How many votes did you get?
2,543. I came third. And speaking to voters in places like Jaywick, where there are houses that don't have electricity, or the disproportionately old population or the disproportionately economically inactive population, I don't think Farage's brand of politics actually will reactivate these people into voting. And this is for the pure and simple reason that actually what these people need is an active constituency local MP. And Douglas Carswell in 2015 was that for them. That's the reason he held on as a UKIP MP. Nigel Farage, if you look at his reputation in the European Parliament, was one of the laziest legislators. I don't mean that horribly. Like, he just didn't turn up. He didn't show up.
Well, but
if he's not willing to put the work in, he doesn't deserve to win.
Many people would say he was one of the most effective MEPs we ever had. Jessica Harrington, back to the issue of polling. If Nadine Dorries is saying this could happen, and the trend seems to be inexorable, could we be approaching that crossover point?
I don't think so. No, I've known Nadine many years. She has her views, and as we all know, she's not a fan of Rishi Sunak. But what I do think that this week, what I would say is, in terms of where we are, this is the week when Farage has, he's made his big declaration, he's going to stand. So I'm not surprised to see a bit more interest in the polls where Reform are concerned. But in the end, I do think that people are voting for the next Prime Minister. So therefore, I don't think that they will stick to getting any or many seats at all. I also think that the one advantage to the early call for the election, which came as a surprise to so many people,
came as a surprise to most Tory MPs.
To most Tory MPs, exactly. And I think
they don't seem very happy about
it. Well, that seems to be the case. But one advantage of it was that it took reform by surprise. They haven't had the sort of 6-month build-up that they were probably banking on to make their case. So in the end, I do think that people they're going to put their cross next to who they want for the next Prime Minister.
OK, and that appears at the moment, Dennis McShane, to be Sir Keir Starmer. So, if you like, scrapping it out for the silver medal here in terms of the electorate. Do you think we're approaching that crossover point where reform, against the backdrop, especially of what was seen in the last day or so from Rishi Sunak, could they overtake the Tories?
No more than the Communist Party could have overtaken Labour in the 1950s or 60s. It's quite common in Europe. You see a celebrity politician, which is what Nigel is, who gets a big following, but it doesn't translate into political votes at the ballot box. And don't forget, Nigel has lost every parliamentary election he's fought. You said he was the most influential MP, and a slight slip of the tongue.
MEP.
No, you then corrected it to MEP, and that's the point. He had no influence on the direction of European travel, all the things he didn't like.
Well, the referendum wouldn't have happened without Nigel Farage.
No, the referendum was argued for by the Lib Dems, by William Hague. I wrote a book in 2014, Brexit, Why Britain Will Vote Out. I warned this referendum was coming constantly, and Nigel was certainly a powerful spokesman for it, but so was half of the Conservative Party and many others, including on the Labour side. They got their referendum. Now the problem is, that's Nigel's big win, but I think even the fairest person, Martin, would say it's turned into a big loss for the country, and you don't see a single Tory MP defending it. You don't see many media people defending it anymore.
We could argue that the Tories didn't get Brexit done, perhaps, but look, we have to move on. Thank you, chaps. And now let's talk about the Liberal Democrats. Callum, you'll be happy about this, because this week the party said it would help end the hospital crisis by enabling thousands of people ready to be discharged but stuck in hospital beds to get care, as well as help the elderly to stay in their own homes longer. And they've also pledged £2.7 billion to tackle this problem. Will this fix the NHS then? Callum?
Yes, because it's about looking about the longer term. It's about going, actually, where can we put the money in early to prevent this preventative care? And if we look at Ed's very powerful personal story, but actually it's not just about Ed's personal story, it's about the story of millions of people who feel voiceless across the country, carers. And that is all of our parents looking after their child when they're ill, temporary carers. That is the thousands of people when they've got a dying parent who have to take time out of work, or when they've got a sickly or ill or long-term disabled a relative. These are people who have felt, and we find this when we're speaking to voters all the time, people have felt voiceless for generations and for years. And we've got a plan, a genuine, well-costed, well-articulated plan to actually fix the problem long-term. And I think let's leave all the party politics aside. I think this is a plan different people can get around. It's been complemented by people in the Telegraph and the Times, places that don't traditionally sort of complement Lib Dem plans. But actually, this is a strategy that's actually going to have a long-term solution to the social care crisis facing our country.
OK, great. So we have to leave it there, and that's great stuff. Callum Robertson, Jessica Harrington, Dennis McShane, thank you very much. Now we need to head to a break. We'll be back soon.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mervyn Kirsch was a boy when the war began. By D-Day, he was trained and ready to fight after years waiting.
It was taking a long time. I suppose I was an agitator.
He remembers reality unfolding to the sound of thumping guns.
In the morning, about 5 o'clock, they woke me up to say we were in going towards France now, and I could see the outline in the dawn, and I could hear couldn't see, but I could hear the shells, big shells going overhead both ways. Nobody was bothering to fire at me, which was quite good. Then I began to feel nervous, and I sort of realised it's not just an adventure, it's actual world war.
Mervyn served in the Ordnance Regiment. His job was to get supplies like ammunition and vehicles onto the beach. When an advance party, including some of his friends, were destroyed, Mervyn stepped up.
The head of me went a reconnaissance unit. We were supposed to go on D+6. The reconnaissance unit was going D+2 to find a suitable site for 200 drivers and 1,000 vehicles, which we were going to stock, all kinds. They went across, but they didn't get across. They were torpedoed, the only boat torpedoed that day. I was put on a boat that night, any boat, going across, and told to find a suitable site for vehicles and men. So I just crossed over and I landed, got to the top of the cliff, and just with a strange driver in a track vehicle, told him just to drive down one of the roads and see what we can find.
The People's Channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
As time passes,
She could have saved Storm.
You made my argument for me.
My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter with a sharp take on every story.
went everywhere. Something practical could be done.
Or I can become something different.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
And welcome back to the show. And many MPs have decided that this election is the right time for them to step down. And last week, former Conservative MP for Crawley, Henry Smith, announced his resignation after 14 years. And joining me now to talk about this is the man himself. Welcome to the show. A pleasure to have you. So 14 years ago, funny enough, tonight we have this big TV debate. The original TV debate, 2010, was when the nation was introduced to Clegg Mania. That's when you stepped up and you were elected into that coalition. Shall we start with that? The 2010, you get in, David Cameron, of course, Prime Minister, Nick Clegg. What was that like?
Well, you're making me feel very old now because it seems like ancient history. So much political water has passed under Westminster Bridge since that time. At the time, we thought it was quite sort of edgy and exciting that there was a coalition government, which we hadn't seen before for many decades previously. Little did I know that would be the most stable 5 years of my 14 years in Parliament. So it was obviously very exciting entering Parliament. It was a combination of an ambition, something I'd wanted to achieve for such a long time. And we weren't expecting to go into coalition, so it was certainly a very interesting time. But it really does seem so long ago. Since then, of course, we've had the Scottish independence referendum, the Brexit referendum, the Brexit deadlock and chaos, a global pandemic, war in Europe. So there's been lots to be keeping me busy.
Let's talk a bit about Brexit. Do you honestly think that David Cameron, when he said, I'll put it in the manifesto to grant the referendum, did you think that that would ever happen?
I hoped it would. I've been somebody who has been arguing that the European Union was bad for this country's democracy and independence for many years beforehand, when it was very actually unpopular. It was seen as a bit of an odd fringe argument to make. And so I was pleased it was in the manifesto. Obviously David Cameron didn't believe in leaving the European Union, as he made abundantly clear, which was the right thing to do because, he lost the argument. But when that referendum came, I could just feel, I knew it was going to happen against what the opinion polls said were the odds. One of the reasons why I'm leaving Parliament now is I think we have squandered the 80-seat majority we had in 2020. We could have done so much more with those Brexit freedoms that we have now. appreciate, COVID came along, Russia's invasion of Ukraine, but I really do feel we could have made more of Brexit and still can.
A lot of people listening to this, Henry, will be nodding their heads profusely. It seems astonishing, does it not? That in a heartbeat, that 80-seat majority is being handed to where we seem to be travelling the direction now, a Tory wipeout, akin to 1997. In that respect, Henry, are you sort of glad you're ducking out now?
I think now's the right time. There are a number of personal reasons as to why I've decided not to seek re-election, but also over the last 2 years, I've felt increasingly that the strategy that the government is employing fits less and less with my principles. As I say, I think we could have been far bolder as a party with a good majority. We should have been slashing taxes. We should have been realising those Brexit freedoms that we had in so many different ways. And we really, I think, wasted that opportunity. And there have been far too many unforced errors that have been made, and indeed even in the last 24 hours have been made, things that really, as a party, we should have been avoiding. And so the tragedy of this is that it looks like we will be handing an election over to Keir Starmer, who stands for nothing, or worse than that, actually has very left-wing tendencies, and certainly the people behind him have very left-wing tendencies, and I very much worry for the future of this country under a Starmer government.
So, Henry, you've been very forthright there about squandering that 80-seat majority, not getting a proper Brexit done. Do you think the problem is the Conservative Party simply hasn't been very conservative? It's no longer a Conservative Party. It seems still to be split along the kind of wet Tories, you might call them, and the more conservative actual Tories. And is that the undoing of the party? Is that why we are where we are now?
Yes, it is. And that's why I think we're seeing reform coming up and being very popular, even though the campaign was only launched just a few days ago. When I speak to the electorate, and I still do, politics will always be in my blood to an extent, they're not crying out for Keir Starmer or Labour. Different from how it was in the mid-1990s, in the run-up to the 97 election. People were enthused about Tony Blair and New Labour. Yes. They're not enthused about the Labour offering now, but they are disappointed, upset and angry that we have squandered that 80-seat majority opportunity. I think the majority of the country is to the right of centre of politics. They want lower taxes, they want secure borders, and it is bitterly disappointing we haven't been able to deliver that.
Now, Henry, we've only got 1 minute left. We've got so much to pack in of your career. What do you think is your finest achievement in politics? How will you bow out happy?
Well, one of the things I did when the pandemic hit was establish a group in Parliament, an all-party group called the Future of Aviation, to really lobby on behalf of the aviation sector. I had Gatwick Airport in my constituency. I think we've now seen a sector that is booming back to pre-2019 levels and very successful. So that's one thing I'm pleased about. I also did a lot of work on animal welfare in my time in Parliament. A lot of animal welfare policies have been brought through, so I'm delighted about that.
And you're probably relieved to be bowing out at the right time. Henry Smith, an illustrious career. Thank you very much for joining us here on GB News. And I'll be back at Monday at 3 p.m. But first, it's the brilliant Mark Dolan with Friday Night Live. That's, of course, all after your weather with Alex Burkle. Keep it right there. We've got a great Friday night ahead. Thank you very much.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening. It's time for your latest GB News weather update, brought to you by the Met Office. It is feeling a bit fresh considering it is early summer at the moment, and there will be some showery bursts around through the next couple of days, all due to an area of low pressure just to the north-northeast of us that's driving some cooler air across the country, and also some showery bursts as well. The showery bursts will be pushing their way southwards as we go through this evening and overnight. Some clear spells in between, particularly across some eastern parts, eastern Scotland, northeast England perhaps, where we get the clear skies here. Temperatures could drop, could get into low single figures, possibly a touch of grass frost. Nonetheless, a bit of a fresh, chilly start for many of us tomorrow. If we take a closer look at what we can expect tomorrow morning, then starting off in the south, a relatively cloudy picture for some of us, but some showery bursts possible and some decent bright sunny spells maybe around the Bristol Channel. Also a swathe of cloud and rain affecting more central parts, that pushing its way southwards. Then across Northern Ireland, Northern England and into Scotland, a mixture of sunny spells and scattered showers. The showers will always be most frequent in areas exposed to that north-northwesterly wind. So northern, northwestern Scotland are going to see the most frequent showers, and here they will be pretty heavy at times. There could even still be some rumbles of thunder and a bit of hail mixed in, and all the time some sleet or snow is possible over the highest ground. The cloud and rain across central parts through the morning does shift its way southwards and breaks up as it goes, with brightening, sunnier skies developing across central parts as we go through into the afternoon. Temperatures just about getting into the low 20s, a bit disappointing for the time of year. Sunday then starts off on a bright note across southern parts, again pretty chilly for some here, but increasing amounts of cloud and outbreaks of rain will feed down from the north, and so particularly across northern parts it is going to be a bit of a damp day with some heavier bursts of rain possible. More showery rain to come as we go into the beginning of next week, and no major rise in our temperatures.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather.
It's the Great British Summer Giveaway, and have we got a prize for you? There's a totally tax-free £15,000 in cash to make your summer spectacular. Spend that extra cash however you like. You'll also win a brand new iPhone, Apple AirPods, and if that wasn't enough, a £500 voucher to spend at your favourite UK attraction, so you can enjoy amazing days out this year. For a chance to win the iPhone, treats, and £15,000 cash, text prize to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or post your name and number to GB06 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 28th of June. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
This is GB News, and we are Britain's election channel.
This vote may seem to be about the politicians in the media, but it's actually about you.
And we won't ever forget that. Join us up and down the country as we follow every moment together.
Now more than ever, it's important to hear
all sides as you make your decision ahead of polling day.
We're here for you.
This is GB News,
The People's Channel,
Britain's election channel.
GB News is Britain's election channel.
And when the big stories break, we're tackling them on Britain's newsroom. When we disagree, and we disagree a lot, it's even livelier than normal.
We don't disagree that much.
We do.
His comedy, though, is revolting. I knew her, unlike you.
That explains Beverly Turner's temperament.
It's a bit frosty in here, isn't it?
You'll have one of me one day.
Yeah, for dartball practice.
Britain's newsroom on GB News. Weekdays, 9:30 a.m.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. GB News, Britain's election channel.
I'm Arlene Foster on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
New director tonight. Welcome aboard, Andy. It's going to be a wild one. From the world headquarters of GB News, this is Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. The weekend starts here, so bring your own drinks. The admission is free. And let's be honest, there's an election happening, so we all need a drink. On tonight's show, should we cancel the election and just give it to Labour so we can all have a nice July? Sir Keir Starmer's father was a toolmaker. There's a gag in there somewhere. But do politicians' backstories actually matter? Also tonight, in a Friday Night Live exclusive, a former top government advisor has quit the Tory party in fury. He tells me why shortly. Plus, a crushingly awkward moment involving Queen Camilla and Emmanuel Macron's wife. Is it time to ditch royal protocol? And what does an eligible bachelor look like in 2024? To fall out over those topics and many more tonight are my Friday A-team. We've got former BBC radio broadcaster Liz Kershaw, author and journalist Emma Wolfe, and political commentator Shahab Mossavat. My Friday feeling monologue is coming. You won't want to miss it. It's my roundup of the election madness so far. But first up, the news headlines and Sam Francis.
Very good evening to you. It's just after 8 o'clock and we'll start with a roundup of election news today. Leading figures from the 7 major political parties are now currently facing off in the second televised debate of the general election campaign. It's taking place on day 16 of campaigning, which has today been dominated by the Prime Minister's decision to leave a major international D-Day ceremony early yesterday. Well, in the opening minutes of the 7-way debate, Penny Mordaunt, the Minister for Conservatives, has said that Rishi Sunak was completely wrong and that he was right to apologise. Well, earlier, Rishi Sunak admitted that returning home for a TV interview was a mistake, but said that people should judge him by his actions when it comes to supporting the armed forces. However, returning to campaigning this evening, the Prime Minister was heckled in Wiltshire. Rishi Sunak was discussing his economic track record when a doctor shouted from the audience.
The country is not stupid. They know when lesser qualified people are being used to conduct consultations. They cannot be coped with by half-qualified staff. And you will find out how much they earn. The amount that they earn is publicly declared on every website.
Well, I just want to bring you some breaking news, in fact, that we're getting from the Foreign Office tonight. We understand that Lord David Cameron has apparently been targeted in a hoax video call, believing, he says, that he was speaking to the former Ukrainian president. It's been confirmed that the Foreign Secretary exchanged text messages before taking that brief video call with someone purporting to be Petro Poroshenko, the former Ukrainian president. However, Lord Cameron, he says, became suspicious after requesting further contact details and then closed down those communications. Officials have said that they are making that news public tonight in case any video recordings from that hoax call may be manipulated or, they say, used to spread information. That incident follows similar hoaxes that have targeted UK government officials in recent years, but at this stage there don't appear to be any indications of who is responsible for that latest hoax call. Well, to France now, and standing on the cliffs that US soldiers scaled on D-Day, Joe Biden has warned against modern authoritarian threats today. Speaking in Normandy this afternoon, the US president stressed the need to support Ukraine, and he drew contrasts with his rival Donald Trump. He also urged people to stay true to the values that were fought for in World War II.
We're the fortunate heirs of a legacy of these heroes. Those who scale the cliffs point to Hawk. We must also be the keepers of their mission, the keepers of their mission, the bearers of the flame of freedom that they kept burning bright. That is the truest testimonial to their lives. Our actions every day to ensure that our democracy endures and the soul of our nation endures.
President Joe Biden there speaking earlier this afternoon. Well, in other news today, CCTV images have now emerged showing TV doctor Michael Mosley shortly after he left a Greek beach and then went missing. The TV presenter, who's known for appearing on programmes like the BBC's The One Show and the podcast Just One Thing, hasn't been seen since Wednesday of this week. Sniffer dogs, divers and drones are now scanning that island, which is about 25 miles north of Rhodes, to find Michael Mosley. And finally, some sports news for you. Harry Kane has returned to captain England in their final friendly against Iceland ahead of Euro 2024 tonight. After confirming his final squad yesterday, manager Gareth Southgate is now fine-tuning his best team for Germany. His side are among the favourites to lift the trophy, and he's left some big names out of his 26-man squad, including Jack Grealish and James Maddison. They have both been dropped, while Harry Maguire is also set to miss out because of injury. England are opening their campaign a week on Sunday. For the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts. You can scan the QR code on your screen or go to our website, gbnews.com/alerts.
Do you remember the good old days when election campaigns involved parties and political leaders trying to look good and get re-elected? Those were the days. Enter stage left Rishi Sunak, who ducked out of the D-Day 80th anniversary in France early to do a TV interview. This was a move of such catastrophic misjudgment, you have to wonder whether the big man even wants to win. The bizarre sight was that image of David Cameron posing alongside Emmanuel Macron, Olaf Scholz and Joe Biden. There he stood, a sort of pretend prime minister, Rishi Sunak's taller, chubbier stunt double, a political manifestation of the speedboat that you could have won on Bullseye. After a feisty performance from Sunak in the Leaders' TV debate with the hotly contested figure of £2,000 of extra taxes under Labour landing, the PM has now given himself even more work to do. Meanwhile, when asked on that TV debate whether he'd pay for a relative to go private if they were languishing on an NHS waiting list, Sir Keir Starmer quickly answered no. Starmer has been accused of placing ideology over empathy, whilst other commentators doubt his honesty. Would he really let a loved one die in order to maintain his commitment to the NHS? If so, then the next time one of his relatives gets a minor sniffle, they'd better get their affairs in order and write a will. The only winner of the TV debate for me was ITV presenter Julie Etchingham, who I think would make an excellent Prime Minister. Meanwhile, the Lib Dems' Sir Ed Davey continues to paddleboard on lakes, cycle down wobbly streets and career down water slides on an inflatable. It's not clear whether he wants to win the election or just appear on the next series of I'm a Celebrity. A bumpy couple of days for the Greens as well. The party is investigating claims reported by the Times newspaper that nearly 20 of its election candidates have shared anti-Semitic material online. A timely reminder to this eco group to forget about the Middle East and stick to electric bikes, wind farms and organic waste. They should swiftly recycle those alleged anti-Semites or leave them out for compost. A tough week for new Welsh First Minister Vaughan Gething. Is he going to be Wales's answer to Liz Truss as he loses a vote of confidence in the Senedd following allegations he took campaign donations from a company which has been convicted of pollution? Either way, the story stinks. Meanwhile, John Swinney's SNP are having to deal with Scotland's answer to Nigel Farage, Nigel Muck Farage, Alex Salmond himself, whose Alaba party is seeking to replace the SNP as the party that really wants independence. After all, do the SNP really still want independence, particularly after they've seen the books? They're starting to look like one of those Church of England archbishops that doesn't believe in God. Meanwhile, the aforementioned Nigel Farage returns to frontline politics as leader of Reform UK. The OnlyFans model who threw a milkshake at him has been arrested for assault. This kind of thing is an absolute disgrace. No public figure should fear for their safety when out campaigning. But her move demonstrates that this maverick politician is disliked by as many people as he is loved. So here we are, 2 weeks in, and the election has finally got interesting. Praise the Lord. Starmer has a lead to protect and will face more scrutiny in the days ahead, given that he is now, according to the pollsters, Prime Minister-elect. But you cannot rule out Rishi Sunak throwing one more roll of the dice. As Sun Tzu, the author of The Art of War, once wrote, "Beware the enemy who has nothing to lose." Well, for reaction to that, my Friday A-team. We've got former BBC radio star Liz Kershaw and two newbies to Friday Night Live, author and journalist Emma Wolf and political commentator Shahbab Mostavat. Shahbab, let me start with you. Welcome to Friday Night Live.
Thank you very much.
Remember the golden rule of this show. Imagine you've had a drink and it's midnight.
Yeah, there are never any drinks.
No.
Well, there haven't been any drinks served yet, but I am Shahab rather than Shabab.
Oh, yes, well, I'm glad you pointed out. That's actually a very important distinction. Now, listen, let me ask you about this. I stand corrected. What is your reaction to, first of all, Rishi Sunak's D-Day snub?
It's just absolute hypocrisy, isn't it? It's exactly what we've had from him, really, from the beginning of this campaign. He's always got someone else to blame. It's always somebody else's fault. He has politicised this issue himself by ducking out of the celebrations, the international celebrations. He's come back home to do an interview to further his electoral cause, and now that he's been called out on it, he's saying, oh, but please, lay off, don't make this political. Of course it's political. He's made it political.